Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 6 of the ATL Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Shepard. I'm joined today by Sam Tinkham with Holy Cross. We've got a full lineup for you on deck today. I'd like to shout out our sponsor, lineupcards.com, designs and prints custom 4-part lineup cards, and they also do 11x7 dugout cards for your baseball softball team. It's easy. Visit lineupcards.com, submit your info and your team logo, and they'll print you out your roster on the card if you want. You can do color, black and white, any of that. So go check that out, lineupcards.com. Without further ado, I'm happy to have my buddy on, Tinkham. Right. What's up, dude?
What's up, man? What's going on?
Not much, man. So it's you were in the pecking order. You know, you had to be below JJ and Voltsy.
Yeah.
So
I get it. No problem.
You were number one on my list, but you know how it goes.
That's right. Yep.
So
yeah, I see how it works.
I was looking forward to this conversation today. We always are.
Always.
Very, very blunt with each other and real. And I thought that would be exciting and make for a good podcast. So anyways, why don't you introduce yourself to the millions of people out there listening that may not know Sam Tinkham?
Yeah. So what's up, guys? Sam Tinkham. I'm currently an assistant coach. I'm the pitching coach and recruiting coordinator at Holy Cross. We are a Division I school that plays in the Patriot League, located in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is about 45 minutes west of Boston. I'm about to start my third full season at Holy Cross. Before I was at Holy Cross, I was an assistant coach at Wofford College in South Carolina for 2 years. And then before that, I was the director of baseball operations at VCU in Richmond, Virginia. And I started my coaching career where I played at Grinnell College, which is a small high academic Division III school in the middle of rural Iowa. So kind of been all over, originally from New England though. So it's nice to be back up in the New England area.
You get to go home often to your parents? How far away from it? Your actual home is it?
Yeah, like 70 minutes. So it's like really close.
Yeah.
I probably don't see my parents as much as they want to see me. That's been an adjustment, like coaching at these different places. Like I was home, once a year, twice a year.
Yeah.
But just went home for Thanksgiving. There was a span where like I wasn't home for Thanksgiving for like 8 straight years, something like that. So went home for Thanksgiving and just, watched a ton of college football and NFL, and here we are back at it. Just came from group work this morning, so now we're here about to talk baseball with you guys.
How many weeks of school you guys got before Christmas break?
So we have this week, and then Monday is our last day of CARA, which stands for Countable Athletic Related Activities. So Monday is our last day where we are allowed via NCAA rules to work with guys. So then they have all of next week of class, and then their final start the following Tuesday. So they have, 8 straight days of class left.
It's always so quick after Thanksgiving break. Like
so quick. So it's coming.
Yeah. Do you bring them back earlier than any of the other students?
We actually get back, I think, later than most schools. We will have guys back starting on January 22nd in the spring. So, which is late compared to a lot of people, but
that bugs the shit out of you. I see the smirk. It bugs you so much. I seen your smirk. I was like,
it bugs me so much, but because, so Division I rules, you can start working with guys, January 15th, or if you have if classes in session, you can start working earlier than that. But our classes don't start till the 23rd, I believe. And so, it's really hard.
It's a disadvantage, man.
Huh?
It's a disadvantage to you guys.
Yeah, it's a little bit disadvantage, but, we're okay. We have really nice facilities and we have some avenues. We'll have, we can start working with guys optionally. Anyone that's in the area or guys that live off campus and come back early, we can start working with them on the 15th, and we usually have a good amount of guys that come back early to just because they get bored at college or bored at home, and
Oh
like all
yeah.
their buddies go back to college a little bit earlier. So they get bored, and then they, even if they live in the dorms, they'll crash. They'll crash at our, upperclassmen's off-campus houses, and we'll get after it. And it's actually a pretty fun time because, you just everyone's ready to go. There's only about a month until the season starts at that point, and
Hmm.
everyone's sick of being home and ready to be out on their own again.
Yeah, they're ready to like face some
Yeah, ready to get
outside
out.
outside
Yep,
competition, not just
correct.
fall
Correct.
ball stuff and all that. So,
Yep.
anyways, enough of the intro. I think with the new rule that was passed last week, it'd be
Yeah.
good to start on college roster construction. For those of people that are listening that don't know, um, the NCAA passed another year of 40-man expanded rosters for you
Yep.
guys, correct?
Yep. So that happened the week before Thanksgiving week, I believe. It doesn't change anything. So like that's how we've been.
Since COVID.
It changes a little bit in terms of fifth year guys, if they were still on your roster. If they were on your roster during the COVID year, which was 2021 or 2020, I forget which one. But basically, it's a 40-man roster. The counter goes up from 27 to 32, which it still has been. Um, and it allows for some clarity in terms of how uh, colleges build their roster and how many kids they're going to take. Before COVID, the NCAA Division One limit roster limit was 35 universally. I think is how you say it. I don't know.
I can cut that out. Don't
And
worry.
yeah, that's fair. And so, but after COVID, because everyone, they granted everyone an extra year of eligibility. Rosters kind of got log jammed, and so they increased the roster limit to 40, and now it's stayed there since. And there's no the NCAA hasn't been exactly steadfast that it's going to stay at 40, but it seems like from the people, at least in our administration and other places, like it seems like that roster limit is not going to go down in the
Uh,
near future.
So you think they're gonna keep passing like?
I think so. I mean, I just think it's really hard to keep pushing 40, 40, 40, and then all of a sudden go back down to 35 because,
You got to cut.
like,
There's
yeah,
probably
I
going to
mean,
be a
right?
lot of
Like
kids
we're
that are just.
recruiting. Yeah. So, like, we already committed. So, like, for us, we're like a, mid to low level, mid major program. And in terms of our conference and stuff like that. And, we already committed a 2025 and have a couple offers out to other 2025s. And so, those guys are just finishing their fall of their junior year. So, if you were to say, if the NCAA was to say, hey, we're going to actually shrink it down to 35 again, then what that looks like is then us, at schools, any school across the country, usually having to tell committed kids, hey, you no longer have a spot here, which is not a fun thing to do, and nor
No, that sucks.
yeah, it's a really bad situation all across the board. So I don't think it's going to go down, which just leads to it leads to more opportunities in theory to play Division I baseball. But at the same time, once you get there, it also leads to, increased competitiveness to actually get on the field. So
Which
there's,
probably leads to more transfer kids wanting to transfer because
yeah, it's all tied together. So yeah,
it's called
so
a transition.
yeah, that is called a transition.
Eh,
So now more than ever, rosters across any level really are more fluid. You used to the old rule before the transfer portal, it used to be that if you went from Division I to like if you transferred from a Division I school to another Division I school, you had to sit out a year and lose a year of eligibility. So, way less people were willing to do that. That's why you could have, in some cases, guys would go to a 4-year school, transfer to a junior college, where they could play immediately, and then transfer back to another, 4-year school. Now you get a one-time transfer exception, so you're free to transfer pretty much anywhere you want without having to sit out.
I think
What
people
that
are probably like super familiar with that because of the college football and the way the
Correct.
transfer portal has been with that.
Yes.
Maybe talk. maybe talk about how different or the same it is as football for baseball. Because I
Mhm.
think that's
Yeah.
probably not the mix up, but they understand it as, oh, my starting quarterback for Georgia is transferring and doesn't
Yeah.
have to sit. You know what I mean?
Of course. So last year, the average program across, at least from some information that we got from our compliance office, the average program lost 7 guys to the transfer portal from their previous year roster. Okay. Now that can be at Holy Cross, we only lost 2. We lost 2 guys to the transfer portal, just because I think a little bit, we're a higher academic school and we deal less with the transfer portal than some other programs do. But what it can do is it can allow people to move more freely to different opportunities. Like, say, I'll use that Georgia quarterback example. Like, say the starting pitcher for Georgia wanted to transfer and go somewhere else, maybe Texas. Like, he could do that. No, he could do that, and no one could really stop him. And which would stink from a fan base and their competitiveness. On the flip side of that, it also means that we as coaches have more ways to fill our roster and recruit and to field the most competitive team possible. And what I mean by that is, you know across the board, it used to every program has a little bit different way of building their team. Okay. Some places can rely on, like Holy Cross, for example, we deal almost exclusively with high school recruiting. In the last 3 years, we've brought in 1 transfer. All right. Other places will we'll leave their recruiting class open to deal with almost all transfers, whether that be junior college transfers or, Division I school to Division I school. And there's some programs up there that have brought in upwards of 25 to 30 transfers this year. Okay. And then, there's some schools that do a combination of both. And now, with all those different ways to build a roster, it means that coaches are more aggressive, and because it's our job to field the most competitive team. And if we have shortfalls, going for the quote unquote sure thing instead of, recruiting that in the high school recruiting cycle. And what I mean by that is, say a team has a second baseman that they're not thrilled with, okay? And they were okay. And like, he was a freshman or he's a sophomore and he's fine and he's developing and he's coming along and he's a good player. Well, at the end of the year, that coaching staff could very easily go and get a graduate transfer or go into the transfer portal to try to address that need immediately, or to just upgrade. And the
Yeah.
language that go ahead,
No,
Shep.
I just said yeah. Just
Gotcha. So, one of the things, the way that we at Holy Cross communicate with our team is that, every year, every spot is earned. And that's pretty typical, I would say, across college baseball, of like coaches echoing that message. But the other part of that message is that your job as a player is to earn that spot every year. And it's our job as coaches to try to upgrade that spot every year.
yeah.
And so, even from a high school recruiting perspective, we tell our guys, that at the end of the year, like, you did a great job. If they played well, if you did a great job this year, it's our coaching staff's job to try to recruit somebody better than you to take your spot for next year, because that just increases competitiveness, and that
Hmm.
increases, a level of accountability. It also, it drives our program to hopefully continue to get better, to go and ultimately, everyone wants to win a national championship. And
Hmm.
so there's just more ways to improve your roster quickly. And just because, quote unquote, and the reason I say that is because, just because, quote unquote, like a senior's graduating or senior's leaving the program, it doesn't mean you're just sliding in like high school. It's
Right.
not like
Right.
there's just one way to fill that spot. There's multiple avenues to fill that spot. And coaches, it's our duty as coaches to do that to the best of our ability, regardless of whether it means, giving a younger guy an opportunity who's kind of waited in the wings, whether bringing somebody new in or bringing a graduate transfer in, if that's an option at a specific school with grad school options. And so it's just, I think it's really worth high school players knowing that, because it's one thing to get recruited and commit to a school, but now with 40 guys, the ability to get on the field now is really competitive. And just because you do it 1 year doesn't mean that the coaching staff every year you're there is going to be looking to try to find someone better than you are, because that's their responsibility to the program to continue to make the program, better and better, and continue to grow the program until they're the best in the country.
Well, I don't even think it's just the coaches that do that. I mean, I know when we were at Oglethorpe, so many times it was like our kids are going to play summer ball, and there was a kid that was unhappy at the school he was at, and it
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, you're better than our second baseman. Like, here's my coach's number. Like, you want to transfer?" And that was even
Yeah.
before. That was before it was free. One free transfer um, between divisions. Like, if you went down to Division 3, you could pretty much play right
Yep.
away. But uh, they've basically allowed you guys to, and we as college coaches have always known, like, and I've always said, it's a business and it's
Mhm.
treated as such. And they've basically made it so you guys can do that more freely. And I imagine every coach and program have their different ways of doing it. Where
Yeah.
some guys, and I can't really fault them for this when you work with a freshman versus like a sophomore or junior, but it's like, why am I going to go recruit high school kids when I could just go to the transfer portal and recruit 20 sophomores that have already been through that learning
Mhm.
process of a freshman year? Because it's such a steep curve, right? Like that
Yeah,
jump
of
when they
course.
first get on campus. So that's it. Do you think um you guys only lost two to the portal? Do you think being a higher academic school has something to play in to that?
Yeah, I think being a higher academic school definitely does, because I think the degree that we offer specifically at Holy Cross plays a large part in the recruiting process out of high school and why guys come to us in the first place. And then also, how much that degree is worth once you graduate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that definitely plays a large part in it. Um, and I think we tell people, part of our recruiting pitch is like, choose Holy Cross for the right reasons. Like, obviously, we want baseball to be really important to you, and you want to play and want you to care a lot about baseball, and we want to win and we want to do all that, but also understand the opportunities that this school provides outside the field in terms of getting a great education, becoming a part of a fantastic, fantastic alumni network, and
Mm-hmm.
having the opportunity and skill set and to pursue anything you want after college, whether it be a graduate degree, whether that be opening your own business, whether that be chasing your dream job and doing it well. And I think, the academic and relationship part at Holy Cross definitely plays a role in that.
The alumni, that's one question that I instruct our guys to ask on a
Yeah,
visit is,
absolutely.
I mean, because every coach, I mean, I've been there, man. We're a used car salesman, right? Like, we're going to tell you all the things you want to hear, and we're going to show you the good parts of school. And the kids that ask the questions like, where are some of the places that your baseball alumni specifically have jobs
Mhm.
at? Because, for example, Oglethorpe, like, we had a pretty good in with like EY, and
Mhm.
a lot of our guys would go, yeah, every year we'd get two guys that would graduate and go work at EY, and like, that's a great job to
Yeah,
start out at, in a great place. And you just, that alumni base is huge because it's who you know.
of course.
It's not what you know. It's sometimes not even where you got your degree from. It's
Mhm.
who has laid the path from that place and where
Yeah.
they went, and
Yep.
are they willing to give back, and are they
Yep.
involved in the program? So that stuff's, it matters. So
Yeah, man. So I'll talk on that. So the first thing that I want to quickly point out is, this idea, because I've heard other coaches reference this idea of being like a used car salesman. And to be honest with you, Shep, like,
disagree with
I don't,
me.
feel like yeah, like, I don't feel like we do that in our recruiting process, and the reason being is because once if we were to get you, right, say you commit to Holy Cross, say you're the, high school junior and you commit to Holy Cross, and then you come in your freshman year and, like, isn't what you thought it was because we were like a used car salesman and we didn't lie or didn't keep any, like, but you didn't know about these things that were
Hmm.
happening and you didn't enjoy your experience. Well, now you're gone anyways, right? You're just gonna transfer.
It's a waste of
So
time.
yeah, so it's a waste of time. So,
I
you
didn't
know,
say I didn't say that every college coach was a used car salesman, but we know the ones that are. Well,
yeah, you know the ones that are, but I'm just from like our perspective at Holy Cross, like we are transparent as possible.
you
And
have to be, especially at a smaller
yeah,
school. I was much smaller scale than Holy Cross, but Othorpe, it was the same way. It was like
yeah,
we have to tell you the good and the bad because I'd rather you not come than come and be a pain in my ass
correct.
for a year because you're unhappy. So,
Exactly right.
and I mean, you
Exactly.
probably can think of like 10 coaches that are full of shit right off the top of your head. I think that's why I enjoy doing the recruiting aspect of being on the other
Yeah,
side of
man.
a travel organization because
Yeah.
like I told and Gio said the other day, he goes, "This is going to turn into a Walford podcast. You got one Walford guy and two ex Walford guys." I was like, "Gee, there's a reason why every time we've had a kid that's been good enough to play Division 1, like these guys are my first call because they may not be they're not used car salesmen and I know that if they're going to recruit our guys, they're going to go there and be taken care of and
Yeah.
not just what have you done for now if our guys mess up then it is what it is but
Yeah.
like you guys aren't that right and
Yeah.
it's not all college baseball coaches and
No
it's
doubt. And there's more like there's way more good coaches out there and awesome people than there is bad ones,
yeah
right? Like
for sure
way more. And it's just one of those things of like I think it's really important on the player side with us. Like we want the players to be straight up with us because again, like there's so much flexibility now. Like the player can leave whenever they want, which is awesome. Like that's a great thing. Like to not feel pigeonholed. Like, yeah, I'm gonna have to give up an entire one of my 4 years of college athletics if I want to move schools because I came here and I got it wrong. Like personally, like I don't think you should be penalized for moving schools. I know
no
that's a minority of a lot of coaches.
you shouldn't be penalized
But like so like I enjoy the concept and the theory of having a one-time transfer. I think that's awesome. But you know, I, like it just doesn't make sense to try to quote unquote hide things in the process on either
no
end
no
because there's just so much flexibility and fluidity that like you can just get out of it and go somewhere else and just you're just wasting each other's time.
but I mean time is money and the 4 5 years kids are in college I mean brother I would go
Yeah,
back in a heartbeat it's like it's the best 4 years of your life even though when you're in the middle of it, you got to write that 5 page paper. You're like, oh my God, now I got weights and,
yeah,
I got Coach Tinkham up my butt, like about throwing. And it's like,
yeah,
then you got all of these older people saying, like, listen, if I could go back, I would. And you're like, yeah, whatever. Like,
yeah,
but I would go back in a heartbeat because, when you get our age and you got to worry about like bills and responsibilities other than what you had when you're in college. And if a kid goes somewhere and he's unhappy the first year, it's it was before it was like, do I know I'm gonna waste a whole year by transferring? And maybe it's one of those things where like, oh, it'll get better, I'll stick it out, and then it never
mhm,
gets better, and then it's like, well, I'm two
yeah,
years in. If I go somewhere else, I lose these credits. I got to sit
yeah.
out for a year. I might as well just stick it out. And then they're unhappy and they have just a miserable college experience when it's supposed to be the happiest times of their life. You know what I mean?
Correct, and it's supposed to be something that, they're proud to graduate from, and they are proud and really, feel like their time and money and years there was worth it. And I think, looking at and that's why I think alumni bases have such, it can be such an indicator of understanding the experiences that current students have at a specific school. And it's one of our like one of the biggest pros of our school that we point out in the recruiting process is that in the last over the last 5 years, Holy Cross has been top 10 in the percentage of alumni that give back to the college annually. And so, why do people give money? Because they are passionate about a place or a thing and really enjoyed their experience. And I think that that statistic shows how many people go to Holy Cross and then graduate from Holy Cross and really value their education and also their athletic experience at the school as well.
I have who's your favorite alumni from Holy Cross?
Mm,
For whatever reason, it doesn't have to be baseball. It could be anyone that graduated from Holy Cross.
It's a good question. I feel like I'm going to get this is a big question because,
Do you know that I have someone in my mind that I love that graduated from Holy Cross? I don't know this person. It's famous.
you don't know this person?
No.
Huh.
Uh,
The person that graduated from Holy Cross that was on our baseball team when I was there that I enjoy right now, there's three. One would be Eric Lopes, Chris Benton, and probably Jake McOsker.
what about non-baseball players? That
I feel like you're asking me a trick question here that
no.
I shouldn't
No, my Bill Simmons.
know. Oh, okay. Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
going non.
Gotcha.
That's why I was going non-famous. I was
Gotcha. Okay, okay,
curious
okay.
if
Yeah,
I mean
yeah.
I'm sure you knew that he graduated there, but like
I did. Yep.
he references his time at Holy Cross all the time
Yep.
on his podcast and all the stuff that he's done. And um I don't know, maybe I'll tweet at him after this is done and say, hey, I did a podcast with the Holy Cross baseball coach. It's going on Spotify,
That's
which
right. Give a
he's
listen.
sold sold his company to Spotify for millions and millions. But anyways, sorry, I digress. Your next topic that you've picked, and for the people that are new, or the people that have only tuned in for an episode or two or whatnot. First of all, go back and listen to all of them. They're great. Second of all, press the subscribe button if you haven't. You can also find us on Apple and Spotify, audio version only. You can also see the video portion on YouTube. I give you the coach that we're having on. I want you guys to pick one or two or three topics
Hmm.
that you guys want to talk about, and I throw one in there that usually comes from a bin of questions that our parents have asked me or just wondered about. And some of the stuff that you guys have picked lets me know that I think I'm doing this right because
Yeah.
it's things that you guys are passionate about, or I'm like, oh my god, yes, things that don't get mentioned or thought about. Gameplay development.
Yeah.
And I said expand on that a little bit, and you did. And how you expanded on that was what I was hoping you would.
Yeah.
And I love it. And I think it's one of the things that gets lost
Hmm.
with the way baseball is today. Um, and that's not old man yelling at the crowds. Like there's a lot of things
Yeah.
that we do a whole lot better today than we did. I was taught to swing down to create
Yeah.
backspin, but
Yeah.
gameplay development.
Hmm.
Take that, go on a rant. I'll hang up and listen.
Okay. So it's been so the reason I said gameplay development is so I'm the pitching coach and we this year on our pitching staff are going to have our pitching staff is going to be made up of anywhere between 55 and 60% underclassmen. Okay. So the freshmen or sophomores. And the way that I've coached this fall and into the off season and preseason has been with the one thought, simple question of how can we get inexperienced younger pitchers ready to pitch the majority of innings in the spring at a high level.
Tink. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck, buddy.
Yeah. So it's an interesting question. And, you know, it's not it's not necessarily like a sexy question. And what I mean by that is, when guys get to during the first couple weeks that pitchers get to Holy Cross, and I'll just speak to my own experiences.
Yep.
All right, like, yep, like let's get on the technology. Let's get on the Rapsodo. Do we have TrackMan? Like, what's my spin rate? How do I create a nastier slider? What are we gonna like?
What's my
And
tunneling looking like today, Tink?
yeah, what's my tunneling looking like
Stand
today?
in there for me. Let me know.
No doubt, no doubt, and all of that is important. Like I am not saying that that is not important. It is important. It is very important. But the question then that I respond with during once we get to inter squads is when those same guys are, watching, we have something on the line for who has, early morning tarp the next morning for which inter squad team, right? And their
Ooh.
pitchers out on the mound, and I'll look down the dugout and I'll go, hey, Danny, do you care about so and so's spin rate right now as he's about to throw a 3-2 pitch with the bases loaded in the ninth inning to see if you have to wake up at 7 a.m. to tarp on a Saturday morning? And he's like, no. And I go, yeah, man, just remember that. And the reason I ask that question, the reason I bring that up is because when we get to the spring and we're in the middle of games and we're in the middle of the season and you're pitching in game, at that moment, at that exact moment when you're in the game, some of those things don't matter as much. And all of that leads all of those variables lead to one really simple fact of we're trying to do with what we have available in the moment. We're trying to use to get as many hitters out as possible while giving up the least amount of runs possible on the pitching side. And when you're in the moment, when you can't change things, your ability to throw strikes, your ability to throw your best pitch, your ability to throw your best off-speed pitch, your ability to hit certain spots, all are much more easier to control in theory than, hey, I'm going to try to raise my arm slot here and rip off and, worry about my tunneling, because those things in the moment don't matter in the middle of games. And do they matter in terms of practice and preparing for games? Absolutely, 1000%. But when you are thinking about development, a lot of times people think about velocity, pitch, pitch improvement, pitch design, and all of that's one bucket of the development process. I think there's three different development, buckets from the pitching side. I think it's, from a velocity slash stuff slash pitch design, that's one bucket. Bucket two is like the game development bucket. Okay. And we'll get there in a second. And then bucket three is the mental game. Okay. Because the mental game shows up in your delivery. Your previous guy on this, Coach Volts, is big on that saying. The mental game shows up in your delivery. And I got that from him. But the mental game shows up in your delivery. And so as a coach and as a player, we need to, especially when you're an underclassman, we need to hit on all three of those aspects of development, not just the stuff velocity bucket.
Mhm.
And so what are some ways that we can do that? Well, we'll first start off, most college programs have anywhere between, let's say, 15 to 20 pitchers on their pitching staff for a season. All right. Do you agree with that, Shep? I would assume.
Yeah. I'm not gonna.
So
I'm not
15
gonna
to
fight you
20.
on it.
Yeah. So let's just call it, depending on anywhere between 15 and 20 pitchers.
Let's call it 17.
Okay. We'll have 17 pitchers. All right. You're going to have 3 starters, maybe a fourth. Okay.
Fourth is gonna
So
rotate.
yeah, exactly. So you're going to have 3 starters. So that means 14 guys all of a sudden are going to become primary relief pitchers. Let's go back to in high school and their previous experience before college. How many of those guys that are now on the college roster, the primary role was a relief pitcher? And
One.
I would argue that very few of those guys were primary relief pitchers. At least in our recruiting process, yeah, maybe one.
One.
Like it was almost predominantly, the best player on their team, the best pitcher on their team, or the second best pitcher on their team, and they were a starter to throw as many innings as possible, which all makes a lot of sense. Well, all of a sudden, you know, now you're going to be coming into the bases loaded in a 2-2 game in the 7th inning, and you're going to be a relief pitcher, and you've been told to get hot quick, and you don't have a routine, and things are happening fast, and the other team's chirping at you, and the umpire's super tight, and the coaching staff and me is expecting you to get this guy out. But you've never done that before, so are you really confident in doing that? And those are the things like that. The first step, I think, is understanding that the majority of the pitchers, the overwhelming majority of the pitchers on a pitching staff at the college level are going to be relievers. And understanding, okay, how does my simply building in the fall and simply building, in the preseason, and understanding once you get to the college level of like, okay, like, how does that change my role? How do I prepare for this role? And what are some things that I can do to help set myself up for success, and also, you know, be in the most high leverage situations, aka closer, jam guy, something like that, right? Because those are the innings that theoretically everybody wants to pitch. And so some of the things that we do at Holy Cross in the fall is I try to every day make people do something a little bit uncomfortable. And the number one way I do that, which is kind of caught on with our pitching staff, is the way that our practice works is we'll go and I'll have everybody do like the dynamic warm up. Then
Mhm.
our pitchers will do all their band work, plyos, all of that. And then right before that, we'll meet. Once everyone's done their plyo work, the shoulder activation, some mobility, some rotation, some med wall work. Once everyone
Little
does that, we'll
scaps,
meet.
get some scaps in there,
Yeah,
you
get
know?
some
Yeah.
scabs going. We'll
Yeah.
meet briefly and talk about, some 2 or 3 things I want us to work on during our throwing portion. And then, we'll break up into what's called a 3-pitch competition. So no one's thrown a baseball yet. And I, break the guys up and we pick out 2 guys. I randomly pick 2 guys. Sometimes I just drop the 2 balls and whoever grabs them first. And each other pitcher has to pick a side of which side they're on.
Love it.
And there's a 3, so they go to 45, 50 feet, 60 feet, an agreed upon distance, and they throw to a squatting catcher of the plate at whatever intensity they want. And the goal is to throw a fastball. It's not 100%,
Of course.
but whatever intensity they want, middle down. And the person closest to the target wins a point, and I'm the judge. And it's best 2 out of 3. And you can heckle, other team can try to get in your head,
I love it.
whatever.
I love it.
And the losing team has to run to the opposing foul pole back. And every year we do this, and like the upperclassmen now are like super on board with it. But like every year we do it, the freshmen that haven't ever done this are like so shocked. And one of them this year actually said to me, he's like, that towards the end of the fall, because we do this literally every day, he's like, you just like, you just got to understand that if you think you can throw a strike in that situation, you're going to throw a strike, because we throw so many strikes over the course of throwing. He's like, you just have to understand, like, you have to think you're going to throw a strike. And I'm like, exactly, man. Exactly. Like, just because you're in a new situation doesn't mean we have to let that situation dictate things that we do all the time, right? Just because you're in an uncomfortable situation, right, doesn't mean that all of a sudden we can't do something because we're uncomfortable. In
Right.
fact, it should be the opposite. We should be training to be able to do anything, such as throw a strike with a fastball in the bottom part of the strike zone, no matter what the situation is.
Let me hop in there because you said so many things that I absolutely love. Just you, you sound so much like me when I coached my team the last 2 years of travel, the 17U kids. So many times I was like, the day of the game, it would be, I'm only throwing 82 today. Like, why am I not up to 85? I'm like, guys, listen. It, looking at the gun doesn't matter because you're not just going to magically be like, I need to start throwing harder.
Yeah.
However your body is working and moving that
Yeah.
day, however you're synced up, that's going to be what you're going to have, right? Maybe you had a bad week of training. Maybe you had football 2 days. um, maybe you didn't eat well that week, whatever it is, it's why you're throwing that day. You
Yes.
have to just go out and compete with whatever you have. And that competing may be I gave us 3 innings today instead of my normal six, but it was I battled my ass off for 3 innings. I kept my team in it, but that's all I could give because I was going 3-2 every count. I didn't have my breaking ball. I just every time I threw it was going to be a ball, but I had to show it. And Gio would tell our guys at Oglethorpe, like, if you start 10 times a year, you're going to go out 2 times, 3 times, maybe. All of your stuff's going to be working. Doesn't matter what pitch you call and what spot. Doesn't matter. You're going to be great. There's going to be 5 or 6 times that one of your pitches is going to be working, and then the other 1 or 2 is just going to be 50% of the time. Then there's going to be days where you go out, your fastball doesn't feel good, your off-speed pitches don't feel good, and you just got to find a way to give as many innings, many quality innings as you can that day. And it's hard for kids to understand that. And like you mentioned, that velocity is really important, right? Like you can't just be worried about like, oh, I'm a baller on game day, but like eventually you have to keep getting better because
Correct.
as you said,
Yep.
you're always trying to recruit a kid that throws harder. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And they got to develop. And the I love I love that you play a game with competition in it, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You could literally
Correct.
develop any game.
Correct.
It's making kids go out there when everyone has to play until they get punched in the mouth. So
Correct.
making them do something that they're not used to doing, it all helps them train to be uncomfortable. Sorry, be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Adversity.
And
Yeah.
very few, there are some people that will wake up in the morning and you could throw them in any situation and they're going to be fine, even if they've not practiced it, even
Yep.
if they've not practiced being like they're just wired differently. There's a lot of different people that it takes a lot of I don't like this
Yeah.
to go out and perform under that because you can make it at that point. You're making excuses when you don't get it done, and it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, man, you're right. It was wet, it was slick. The other opposing sideline was heckling the shit out of you,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, we got an L. It didn't matter. So
Correct.
you can either say, I don't care about all this other stuff that's happening. I'm just going to go out and do it. Or you could just say, nope, conditions weren't perfect. Sorry, coach. But look at
Yeah.
how well I did when it was 70 and sunny and there was no one in the stands but my mom and my dad
Yep.
came and, aunt and uncle were there and they were holding up signs. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think
Yeah, no
that's
doubt. And like,
awesome.
what's the alternative, right? And like, that's the question I asked. Like, we played, we had an inter squad, and like, the mound wasn't great one day, and
Good.
I literally, one of our pitchers was like, I just couldn't get comfortable on the mound. Like I couldn't figure out, like that's why. And I go, okay, well, why don't you during pregame of every game that we play this year, why don't you go look at the mound pregame and let me know if you're capable of pitching? And if I know, okay, and if we find a mound that doesn't suit you, okay, that doesn't look like it's in high enough standards, like then we just won't pitch you that game.
You're going to get a lot of foul balls.
Like, because what's the alternative? Like, if you pitch bad because of a circumstance that you couldn't control and we couldn't adapt, well, then that's just, man, it's really good info for me making
Yeah.
pitching decisions.
It
Like,
makes it
okay, we
easy for
just
you.
can't pitch you
We're
that.
down to 16 today. We don't have
Yeah,
17.
like we just can't pitch you, and like we'll just move on because you admitted and you told me that you couldn't be effective in these situations, and so it's just limiting, right? Like you're just
Yeah.
limiting yourself, and like I think having, especially on the pitching side, especially like we only get so many throws, right? You only get so many throws because you get sore and you get fatigued and things
Yeah.
like that.
They have
But I
they
think
have to
making
matter.
those, yeah, like those throws have to matter and have a purpose. And like the same for throwing bullpens. And you know what? another way that I kind of symbolize like what being a reliever is in college. Like I have people, I think one of the most challenging yet like helpful things that you can do to get better at pitching in game, like in terms of managing your stuff, is following this script in a bullpen. Is simply for called strikes, throwing fastballs after strikes and throwing off-speed pitches after balls.
Oh,
Like that is a
oh,
extremely challenging way to pitch.
let him
And if you
cook.
but if you can follow that script in a bullpen or like at least work on that, that's going to give you a ton of feedback in terms of what you can do. Because one of the things that I believe in is that when you get to the college level, you have to throw less fastballs. Unless you have an outlier fastball in terms of velocity or movement, you usually have to throw less fastballs. And if I was to go to our 17 pitchers right now and ask them their best pitch, 15 or 16 of them would tell me their best pitch is some type of off-speed pitch. And then I would say, okay, so we want to throw that pitch way more often, right? Because like, why wouldn't you want to throw your best pitch more? And they're like, oh, okay.
Seems like
And
it
then
makes
like,
sense.
so then I go, okay, well now let's pick who's the best hitter on our team. And people are going to say, Sean Scanlon for us or Jack Toomey. And I go, okay, if you want to throw more fastballs behind in the count, I want you this at bat when we're going to go face hitters and inter squad. I go, I want you to go and we'll just make it a 1-0 or 2-0 count to Sean Scanlon. And I want you to tell them a fastball is coming. And they're like, why would I do that? And I go, because if you are unwilling or not comfortable throwing an off-speed pitch for a called strike behind in the count in game, that's what they are sitting. That's what they're guessing. And and the reason I make them think about that is because you're like, oh, like if I get that predictable in game pitching and stuff that I don't feel that comfortable about, then how do I get this guy out consistently? And it's like, yeah, that's a really good question. So let's practice it now in the fall in our midweek pens and our touch and feel of like, how do we make ourselves, one, feel more confident, and number two, put ourselves in a situation that we feel like we can get the best hitter out on the other team on a super consistent basis. And usually that starts spearheading the thought of like, oh, like if my slider is my best pitch, I should practice throwing my slider more often. I go, yeah, that's exactly right.
It's such a mental mindset. Every coaches are wise beyond their years, right? Because they've seen so many different situations, so many different kids, and it's getting a kid when you ask them those questions,
Yeah.
you could see the light bulb go off. It's almost like
Yeah.
you see it in their face. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
I never thought. Why did I never think of it like that? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
you didn't know, man. Like, hey, look, I didn't think of it for a while, and then I
Yeah.
did, and someone shared it with me. Someone told me to try this,
Correct.
and going, you have the kids that will, um, whatever you say, they're gonna do, right? Like, doesn't matter. Then you have the
Yeah.
kids that they need to fail, and then they'll say, okay, yeah, you're fine, you're right, coach. And then you have the kids that it's like, well, I sucked because, my arm never felt good because Coach Tinkham made me go out and throw 3 pitches before I even threw a baseball.
That's right.
And
Right.
75% of the time, those kids are the ones that are coming back 10 years later and they're saying, Coach, you were right. I should have just listened to you. I was young and hard
Yeah.
headed. And, you just, coaches, kids need to trust that you want what's best for them, right? Like so many kids think that coaches at all different levels have an agenda and they're like, well, coach wants this kid to do really well and not me because he doesn't like me. And I tell kids like, look, coaches play favorites. Our favorites usually are the kids that do the right things. I don't have to worry about in the classroom. I don't have to worry about it on a Friday night. I know they put the work in, and they may not be the best, but like they're gonna go out and give me 100% effort. And we may try something, and it's
Hmm.
a bad idea.
For sure.
You may you may want to change a kid's slider,
Yep.
and a month in,
Goes terribly.
you look at each other and you're like, hey, look, I thought this was gonna work out better. It's
No
not.
doubt.
It's not worked out. Let's
Yeah.
scrap it. Let's go back. And
Yeah.
the kids that obviously as a coach, you feel terrible when something like that happens. But I guess I appreciate the kids the most that are like, yeah, it's cool, coach. Like I get what we were trying to do, but it just didn't work out. And
Correct.
they. I guess my point is like, I wish more kids would just understand that some of the things we do, there's a reason behind them, and you may
Yeah.
not be able to understand or see that reason,
Yep.
but it's gonna be good for you in the end. Like building the mental toughness of, and I think the one point of you, you said it. You have like when you have to go get hot. How many
Yeah.
times, especially during a college game, right? You're in you're in the second weekend series of the year, big weekend series,
Yep.
and your number two guy in he doesn't look great. It's like second or third inning. He's in a little bit of trouble, and you know that the game's kind of hanging. Where if
Yeah. The things get out of hand. Like
it's
it could be
like
over.
it's
Yeah.
like we need to get someone hot. We need to start getting someone hot now because in 6 pitches, this could be 8-0. So
Correct.
you go get a guy hot, and then your number two pitches like your number two, and he strikes the next two guys out, and then all of a sudden it's still 2-0, and you're like, well, we don't want to pull him just yet because maybe he's figured it out today and he looks better. So then that guy sits down, and then 2 innings later, the same thing, or an inning later,
Yep.
and then you got to get that guy up, and then, or maybe it's like, well, he did give up that big hit. I need you hot right now, and the kid's like, well, I normally throw 25 pitches in the bullpen, and I've only thrown 10. He's got to figure out how to get, whatever your system is, he's got to figure out how to get three, which is hot,
No doubt.
in a minute and a half instead of I did plyos for 2 minutes, and then I did scaps, I did shoulders, I did 30 minutes later, I'm ready
Yeah.
now. I'm ready now, coach.
Yeah.
It's so hard. As a coach, you're not trying to do that to a kid, right? You
Never.
would love it if
Right.
you were like, hey, Tink, you got the 7th inning. Hey, you're definitely going to throw the 8th inning, and then you're
No
definitely going to
doubt.
throw the 9th inning. And by the way, in the 8th inning, we're only going to send 3 hitters to the plate, so just be ready for that, right?
Yeah.
We could send 10 guys to the plate, or we could go 4 pitches, and
Correct.
it's that's why I think your how you practice is so important. It's not even what you practice; it's how you practice the
Yeah.
variance and the
Yeah.
randomness.
Like yeah, and I could talk for the next 3 hours about bullpen management because every year, like morale, everyone's going in the first weekend, everyone's pumped up, like, they know who's starting. It's like, okay, I'm gonna be ready to pitch. But like then stuff starts happening. Number one doesn't only goes 4 innings, maybe he goes seven, like,
First out of the
and
bullpen isn't first out of the bullpen,
first
and
one
it's
out of the
like
bullpen. Then the other team pinch hits with back-to-back lefties. Now you want to get the lefty in the game because there's three out of the next, so there's just those things happen. And I think for us, like the guys, like, and this is where experience matters. Like experienced bullpen relievers are kind of like, oh yeah, like this is how it is. And then usually the first week, 2, maybe 3 weeks, I'm usually massaging, how that I'm massaging like the egos and the mental state of younger players, younger pitchers who went into the game because it's really hard. Like we can try to prepare for it. It's always going to be a little bit different in a game, right? Because the unknown factor. And so now actually in the fall and inter squads, we actually change pitchers mid-inning a lot. And like, it takes a little bit longer, but I think it simulates and tries to at least get guys to understand of like, wow, like that worked for me. That didn't work for me.
mm-hmm.
Because everyone has their own little routine that they do.
Yeah.
and understanding how much they have to throw, understanding the communication that's coming from the dugout to the bullpen in whatever form that is and how quick it's happening. But also understanding like, okay, what's my go-to when I go into the game? Like, what am I like? What's my plan? Because usually you go into the bullpen, go to the bullpen mid-inning, not because something's going well.
No,
Usually
no.
something's not
You've been
going well.
punched in the face usually.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
like, the other team has some momentum, the other like there's runners on base. And so, we try to like I ask, that guys start to think about their bullpen routine, usually like the second or third week on campus in the fall.
right.
And I think everyone should have an idea of like, what's my routine in the pen, in terms of warming up and feeling comfortable pitching game. You always get 8 pitches once you get into the game mid-inning. So what do those 8 pitches look like?
Yeah.
You know, maybe I only threw 4 pitches before. Hopefully not, right? Hopefully not, but stranger things have happened. So I have 8 pitches. How do I use that? And I always say that those 8 pitches should be treated the same because it's a routine and routines help you get into a familiar state of mind in a familiar mental state, which allows you to be more comfortable and confident when you go to face that hitter. And I tell all of our bullpen guys starting now to, as soon as we deem that they're going to be in the bullpen, every single one, almost every, I won't say every, but almost 90% of their bullpens from now until opening day or in the fall, they will throw their best off-speed pitch until they get a called strike on a hitter, because that is almost exclusively what they're going to be asked to do in game. Maybe not, maybe it's not as exclusively, but it's such a, I mean, you go to
It's
your
a high
facility
leverage.
tonight, like
You have to do it.
how many guys are going to start off their bullpen, be like, all right, yeah, we'll do some, simulated at bats, and they're going to throw a curveball, strike one, curveball first pitch, right? Like you don't
You
see
don't see
that.
it. Yeah, not often.
And so like that's when in terms of like gameplay development of just understanding of like, okay, like I'm going to be in this role, right? Or I could be coming to the game. Well, I've done this for the last 3 months of every pen I've done. I've landed my slider for strike one to start the game off, to start my appearance off. And now all of a sudden I asked you to do it again for us. Weekend 2 is at Kansas State. And so when we're at Kansas State in weekend 2, and I want you to throw a first pitch slider to the cleanup hitter with the bases loaded, all right, boom. Like we've done that. We're confident we can do that. Whereas if I asked you before 3 months ago and you've never done that before, you're going to have a way harder time executing that pitch in that spot. And so that development to be able to do that is what, I really refer to as like gameplay development of getting yourself ready to be effective in game with some things that you can practice, just through intent and having more competitive and realistic practice options.
Yeah, and it's not a, it is about throwing your slider for a first pitch and being able to do that. But it's also the mindset of
Yes, of course.
coaches had me do a bunch of different
Mm-hmm.
shit I'm not comfortable with, and it's
Correct.
weird. But I know you're not going to be able to simulate everything that's going to happen at their point in
Correct.
their career, but you can simulate the uncomfortableness of and the
Yes.
randomness. And if they're
Correct.
comfortable with that, then
They can
like
figure it out.
the upperclassman's like, whatever. I had 4 warm up pitches. My arm feels like crap because I had to get up and get down 2 times earlier the game before. Which, and as a coach, like, you never want to do that. You never
Of
want to hurt
course.
anybody, and
Never. No.
it, it's the same on a different level and a different scale. It's the same way for coaches as it is for players, where we have a plan, we have an idea of what we want to do, but the game is going to dictate that.
Yes.
And as a coach, you have to adjust. And
No
some
doubt.
coaches push the right buttons when they adjust, and some coaches don't. Like, you may know you've got a little Danny in the bullpen that Danny's got to feel super comfortable. He's not the guy
Oh,
you bring in the middle of the inning.
no. Correct.
So you try to get him a clean inning. Not always
Correct.
possible, but if you want to maximize Danny, you need perfect conditions for Danny. But if you get perfect conditions for Danny, little sensitive Danny is going to be good, right? So as a coach, like it's the same way where that's why like older experienced coaches, even though they may not know as much as younger coaches, let's say a younger coach is smarter or, he knows more technology stuff, but that older coach has a feel for they talk
Correct.
about gut feeling, right? I think it's got to be
Correct.
both. You got to have both,
And
right?
conviction, right?
Yeah.
Like conviction what you're doing.
And
Because like there's so many like there's so many different ways to be successful and to have success. And that changes by person, that changes by team, that changes by position groups on teams, that changes by like conferences, it changes by sections that like each region of the country plays baseball a little bit differently, which I think is always interesting.
oh yeah. Not just
And
not just plays, like carries themselves
yeah,
differently. Like
yeah,
it's a different ball
correct.
game.
So yeah, like being able to understand and like adjust and understand what you can do and what you are comfortable doing and what you are going to be asked to do. Like, I think leaning into what the coach's expectations or what they tell you to do is going to fit much better because if you're going to, if you don't buy in and if you don't do what like the coach is asking you to do, then that plan that the coach has isn't going to fit what you're doing and you're not going to fit in the plan. And that's going to create one, usually poor results. And number two, it's just going to be hard for that coach to trust you to earn the playing time that you want.
You said it, you said the magic word right there. I think it all comes back down to the trust that, and I think you see a lot of guys, the same guys that win and the same guys that are good in every program that they've ever been at, every stop they've ever had is something about their personality or how
Mm-hmm.
they run things. Their guys trust them.
Yes,
They build a relationship with
very much so.
with their guys, and their guys will, they may not agree, but they know like they may hate the coach, but they know like he gets it done or this guy's smart or whatever, and it's like like you mentioned conviction. Like I tell guys all the time, I don't call pitches in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
I let my catchers call them,
Yep.
and I'll call a pitch here and there. But there are some pitchers that ask for me to call the game or catchers, whatever.
Correct.
And I'll tell my guy, like the catcher will come over and we'll discuss what they threw and whatever count. I think for a high school kid,
Mm-hmm.
it's better to learn that way. And sometimes I'll say, "Hey, why'd you call that pitch?"
Yeah, no
And
doubt.
it may not be the wrong pitch, or I might have disagreed, but I want to hear the thought process. And I think that's how you like grow and develop. But you can call the right pitch in a 2-2 count, 3-2 count, bases loaded. If that pitcher doesn't throw that pitch with conviction, it's not the right pitch.
Yeah.
I,
So,
I'd rather have him throw
yeah.
whatever
So,
pitch he wants to with conviction than the wrong pitch.
yeah. So so I call pitches I call all the pitches um, for and I explain this to our pitchers and catchers for two reasons. One, we have so much information available to us via video and scouting reports that we can leverage that information into making real-time decisions. But that takes time to do, and I do that more than our catchers and our pitchers do.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, like from a game management standpoint, we usually have a better idea as coaches of what we're trying to do. So making sure we're not challenging hitters in certain situations, making sure we're pitching around certain hitters in certain situations, and those types of things. That's why I call the game. But even though I call all the pitches, every pitcher is allowed to shake whenever he wants. And I'll never get up, and I never do get upset with anyone shaking because I firmly believe that the best pitch is the one that is thrown with the most intent and with max conviction. Like that's always the best pitch. Even if it's quote unquote wrong in theory,
Mm-hmm.
like that's always the best pitch.
Yeah.
And we'll always go down with that.
I tell like I mentioned to the guys a lot, like of course you always want to practice the most efficiently. You always want to be
Mhm.
coached the most efficiently with the best possible strategies, everything. At the end of the day, the teams that do the best or perform the best, whatever, are the teams that buy into something and
To
they are
something.
they are all working towards, like a coach may put on a play, I don't know, it's a terrible play, whatever. But if the team believes that they're going to run this play and it's going to work more than the play that's a great design play, but the team's like, this shit sucks. Like,
Correct.
this coach is an idiot. And, and it's hard because, you don't want, I know for me, I always liked when my players would challenge me or ask me to, I always told them, I'll always explain. If I can't explain why I want you to do something or why we're doing something, then I need to retire and never coach again because it
Yeah.
can't be my way or the highway. I mean, it is, but it needs for them to trust you and build that trust in you. You have to be able to explain to them why you are trying to do this with your delivery, why you're trying to do this with your swing, and then they believe it. So
Yeah.
the guys that are like, just do it because I said so, maybe it's right, but your players are like, they feel like they don't have any say or
Or-
like they don't understand. But when guys come and they ask me like, "Hey, coach, why at practice you had me do this? Why? Why are we doing this?" Even if they disagree with me,
Mhm.
I love kids that come do that. Now there's a time and a place. The kids that are doing it in the middle of a game and it looks like they're challenging you as a coach. Like that's not the time and
Yep.
place. But
Correct.
office is always open. Let's come talk about it.
Yep.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you said it really well of like, as long, what do you buy into? What do you believe? And, you know, I would totally agree with that. Like, because the best teams and the best players always believe and have total belief that they're going to get it done. And the question as a coach and what we try to get at with the way we practice is, why do they believe? How do you create belief? And the way that I go about doing that in a practice situation is by showing people that sometimes, like, I put more belief in them than they think they're even capable of doing something. And so, like, for instance, we have a righty who's going to pitch for us this year. He's a freshman, and he has a really, really good slider. And I told him when he came in, he came in the middle of an inning in the inner squad, and I said, "Hey, man, like, I know we usually talk about it, and it's a joint decision of what we're going to throw, like when we start, like, but today you're going to throw all sliders to this hitter until the at bat's over." And he was like, "What? Like, I'm not going to mix it all?" I go, "No, you're going to throw all sliders until the at bat is over because I believe your pitch is better than anything he can do with that." And he actually struck the guy out on 5 pitches. And, I have our guys fill out like a post outing reflection. And in it, he was like, looking back on that, like, I was so mad at you for saying that we're only going to throw sliders as one hitter. And he goes, now that the fall is over, I have so much more faith and so much more belief that my slider, if I execute it the right way and I throw it the way I want to, no one's going to hit it.
this is what I love.
And
This is
And
what I
it's
love.
like, yeah, man, like, that's why we did it. And like, you weren't happy with me in the time, but like, and in the moment, in the heat of it, and you weren't confident at the time, but hopefully in a day, month, 6 months, a year, it's like, whoa, like, all right, now I see it. Like, I didn't see it at first, but like, okay, now I see it. And now, like, I'm better for it. Because we've all been there as players and as coaches,
Yep.
right? Like, we have bosses too. Like, we have head coaches. Sometimes head coaches are like, "Hey, we're going to do this." And you're like, "I don't want to do that. I don't think we should do that." And they're like, too bad, getting bored. And you're like, okay. And then you're like, oh, that was actually a really good idea. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yep.
And I think that's just life in general, though. Like with anything, like it's just a microcosm for life
I
in
mean,
terms of,
it's not to
yeah,
get like sentimental, but it's why you love coaching is you put faith in a kid that e- even if you may not have as much faith as you portrayed, you put
yeah,
faith in that kid, and at the right time in your season or at the right time when that kid needed it,
yep,
he performed, and
yep,
it's it makes you so happy,
yep,
and the team sees that. They're
correct.
like, you if a kid like, for the three strike game, whatever, he
Yeah.
sucked all year,
Mm-hmm.
and you put him out there, and you said you pumped him up because you've known for a month that he's been working his ass off.
Yep.
The whole team picks the other kid,
That's right.
and then this kid is like shit, and you go up to this kid and you said, "Listen, you've worked your ass off for a month. You've done it. You can do it, and you're gonna do it." And he goes out, and you may walk away, and you're like, "There is no way this kid's winning this." And you're thinking about what am I gonna tell this kid after he doesn't succeed? And he goes up and he succeeds.
Yep.
And everyone, the funny part is, everyone that didn't back him to win
Correct.
is so say the punishment is a poll. They
Yeah.
are so happy to run that poll because they seen their buddy succeed because that's what college baseball is about. Like you go,
Correct.
it's the blood, sweat, and tears with these guys. The struggle,
It's
the
sharedness.
it's so hard, and you see your buddy struggling, and you're trying to drag him along, and finally the kid, everyone doubts him, and he gets up there and he does it, and it's like that's what it's all about. And those are the moments that you look back and you remember on. Like those are the great moments of college baseball. So everyone is always like, I don't know if I'm gonna go play. I'm like, listen, you your best 4 years is college baseball with that team and what you go through and what you do. So when my guys are unsure, I always tell them like, prepare like you want to play college baseball. I said because
Yep.
if you do that and then you decide in May of your senior year you don't want to play, that's okay. If you think, I'm not really sure, I'm not going to try because I don't really want to
Yeah.
go, and then in May you're like, oh no, it's over. I want to go play college ball. I can't
It's over.
I can't help you like
It's
I
really hard.
could a year before. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
go do that. Go play college baseball. We do got to. We've been a little long, but I
Sorry.
assumed you and I would be long. Just when we get going, we get going. We do got to touch a little bit about on recruiting.
No doubt.
Um, Recruiting emails
Hmm.
and videos.
Yes.
Start with a video. Kids making a college video, a video to send a college coach.
Yep.
What do you want to see on that? What don't we? What don't you want to see? What's extra? What's unnecessary? What are you looking for?
So I always say that more video is never a bad thing. Like more video, the better. When you're making a video, I would try really hard to include all phases. So if you're a position guy, like get defensive reps in there too, if you can. Um, if you can do any types of measurements, like and have it be somehow reading at the same time, whether it be like a pocket radar or a Rapsodo reading or a TrackMan reading. Even if it's just like an exit velo with a radar gun, like a pocket radar, like, and you can see that, like the measurements always help because video can be deceptive. I would say either from the side or behind. I think for a
for
hitter,
for a hitter and pitcher?
yeah, for hitter and pitcher,
Mm-hmm.
I think ball flight is always nice to see if you're a hitter.
Oh yeah.
At least in some of them, at least in some of them. And I think as a pitcher, like seeing the ball either from behind the catcher or from behind the pitcher is really important to see the ball all the way to home plate. And then
I tell my kids a lot, actually, all the time when we're making a video. If you're not attaching the velocity to it, it's
Yeah.
probably almost it's almost a waste.
Yeah,
It's not totally a waste because you can see
it's
shape,
definitely significantly better if there's a velocity attached with it,
especially with the fastballs. I mean,
Correct.
you can tell. I mean, you can give a we have
Yeah,
radar gun eyes by this point, but
correct.
you can put a ballpark number on it. But you, as a kid, I want to give you the most information as I can. So if I know that I'm good enough to pitch at Holy Cross, or I'm right in the middle, like I want to
Yep.
make a video that shows you that, and I think Velo is part of that.
Yeah, like the more metrics that we have, the better we can give an assessment to you, good
Hmm.
or bad, which can be also then more informative to you on terms of what level you can go and whether we may or may not think you're a good fit. I think defense is really important. Like and for infielders, take like a full ground ball. I would say, some people just have like a guy roll the ball to them and that's shortstop, and it's like, okay, like I get it, but if you can do that, like just have someone hit you a ground ball. Um, just because I think that's good to see, you having to react and move and make that
How you approach the as an
yeah,
infield
how you
guy, like
approach it, like
how
all
you
those types.
approach the ball matters
Correct.
to me.
Correct. So I think that's important, and I don't think it needs to be super long.
Hmm.
Couple minutes, 2, 3 minutes, and that's it.
Yeah,
Uh,
we tell our guys like obviously get as much video as we can as you can, and create before it was create a YouTube and
yep.
or a Twitter. That way, coaches have somewhere to go to see it. We've since partnered with Virtual Combine,
Hmm.
which is, I don't know if you're
Yeah, they're
familiar with
good.
it.
Yep.
Yep. So we've partnered with them, and it's me being able to say, think we got a player
Yeah.
named JJ Edwards.
Hmm.
Here's his profile, and it's gonna have, you know, he's 4'5". He weighs 200 pounds. He runs this. These are his
Yep.
grades. The transcript's uploaded. Here's the links to his Twitter, his Instagram, his YouTube. Here is video of all this that
Correct.
he's taken. Anything he's put in there, he's taken.
Yep.
He's hit on
Yeah, the
rap.
links are great. Yeah, the links are great.
He's hit
Links
on
are
Rap Soto. So that's
yep.
that's what we're trying to get all our guys to make the virtual combine stuff,
Yep.
and um, and they actually have all the college coaches' emails and everything in there that they could just click it and reach out to you guys. If they're writing you an email,
Yep.
I'm assuming, and we've talked about this before 1,000 times, but to confirm for everybody,
Hmm.
short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
You don't care as much about stats because you don't know their competition.
So you can include them, but like I don't
Yeah,
care that much.
you don't care
Like
that they had a 2 ERA or you know,
yeah.
um, if they've got some Bill Simmons is my uncle.
Yep.
I want to go to Holy
Yeah,
Cross.
like include that if
Some
there's a connection for sure.
Yeah, because it makes your job easier as a coach.
Correct.
There's a lead in, right? So it's a little bit easier to that kid is interested, or that kid has some idea of what Holy Cross is and what you guys are about.
Correct.
And I always tell them, put some contact info for coaches,
Yep.
and always attach a video to the bottom because you guys get thousands of emails.
Yep.
You're not going to read a book. Sometimes you're just going to skim. But if
Correct.
there's a link at the bottom, you'll click it. And as every coach on here has said before, like they're most likely not offering a scholarship based on a video. Your
No,
video just wants to pique interest. It needs you to come out to North Atlanta on a Saturday morning at 8 a.m. and bring Coach Shep coffee and then leave an inning later because you didn't
that's
like what
right.
you've seen. You know what I
That's it.
mean? That's it.
That's it.
So, Tink, this has been awesome. And, I know you got to go to the gym. We do have to end with a quick lightning round, which
Let's
is
do
this
it.
is the most unimportant things ever, but it's kind of a little fun. I'm going to ask you some questions. You answer
Yeah,
with
hit me.
short, quick answers. You put pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Yes.
My man.
Love it. So good.
Do you have any pregame superstitions?
No. I usually work out in the morning of a game, pregame. I do some type of workout or exercise.
Nothing crazy though, like same
Nothing
socks, same
crazy.
underwear.
No, nothing like that. No.
Big Green Monster or Chicago Ivy?
Big Green Monster.
Are
I
you
actually hate the Ivy.
are you pro or anti shift?
I'm pro shift from a coaching standpoint. I'm anti shift from a fan standpoint.
Okay, that's fair. That's good. Who's your favorite MLB or favorite baseball player?
Garrett Cole.
You're the first out of 6 to say a current active player. Everyone else has said someone that's long gone.
That's fair. I thought we were only talking about active players, so that's why I said Garrett Cole.
All right, we'll say you,
If I was my favorite player ever, probably Andy Pettitte because he was a left-handed pitcher for the Yankees. I was
yeah.
a left-handed pitcher, so yeah.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No, so an entity.
Best sunflower seed flavor.
Ranch.
Gatorade flavor.
Yellow, lime, yellow,
No, just say yellow. I'm
yellow.
It's
Okay.
so funny that we're so simple that we always just give it the color. And
Correct.
there's one guy that gave
Gatorade Zero though. Like I'm big on the zero.
I love the zero. I drink
Yeah.
about 2 regular Gatorades a year, but Volsey's the only guy that said the actual name,
Of course he was.
full name. I was like, "Oh, you're not a color guy?" He goes, "No, it's a flavor." I was like,
Sounds about right.
"Gabe Volsey." Day or night games?
Night. As long as it's warm. As long as it's warm.
Artificial turf or natural grass?
Natural grass.
Adam Sandler or Vince Vaughn?
Adam Sandler.
Wrong answer. Anyways,
No
Tank.
way. Sandler's so funny, man.
No, man. Vince Vaughn's so funny. It's just I would assume you like Vince Vaughn because he's more of a sarcastic, serious sense of humor. But it's all right, whatever. I mean, people are wrong all the time. So, anyways, Tink, I had a blast today. It's been fun.
Thanks, Shep.
We'll have you back on at some point when you want to come on and
Sounds good.
shoot the shit and whatnot. So
Okay.
go get your lift in. Do you got anything to plug? You guys got any camps coming up?
No. We have one on Saturday, but then that's it.
Yeah, that's too close. All right, cool. I got a little ending here. Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go subscribe to that. You can find us on Spotify and Apple. Download, subscribe, share, all that stuff. Shout out again to lineupcards.com. They'll design custom prints for you, 4-part lineup cards and 11x17 dugout cards for baseball, softball teams. You can get black, white, color, and they'll send you over a mock-up. You accept it or you make changes. Super easy. Check them out, everybody. See you next week on episode 7.